Groove builders, welcome to the workbench. We have our Apollo Saturn V rocket in some really awesome Metal Earth packaging. And I have to admit, I'm really excited to get back into the space models after doing some other ones for a little while. Let's go ahead and take a look at the back. On the back, we have some history on the Apollo 11 Saturn V rocket, and then just below, we have some instructions on how to build it. On the right here, we have a QR code which we can scan to get a 360 view of our model if we need it while we're building. And then right below that, we have a difficulty rating here of about a medium. Finally, on the left, we get a look at some other models in the series. Groovers, let's go ahead and open up our package. We have our instructions. And we have our metal. And this looks really awesome. Too bad there's no gold pieces, even though I'm not too sure where you would put them. Alright Groovers, let's go ahead and get out our first couple of pieces. And with all of our parts cut out, we're ready to start our Saturn V rocket. Let's begin by grabbing part 1 here and trying to find the 2 little holes right here. These are our first insertion holes that we're going to be using with part number 2 right here. Let's grab part 2. Part 2 is formed very simply. We're just going to form up the edges. Now make sure that you're using the right side. You'll notice that 1 does not have that little engraved detail. So you're going to bend that just like here. There we go. Very cool. And same with the other side. You can use the inside of your tweezers. Makes it a little bit easier if you want nice uniform bends. There we go. Very simple. Now we're going to take the part number 1 and part number 2 and we're going to attach them together. Alright, and with 2 quick little twists, we have part 2 on part 1. Now we need to form the rest of part 1, being very careful not to warp the piece. It'll be very easy because of all the open areas here. Let's do it very carefully. Going right to the edge. Just like that. And there we go. Now, if we did this correctly, you'll notice that the tabs line up with the insertion holes. So it's just a quick little insert, and then we're going to fold these over. These should blend in very nicely with the actual look of the Saturn V rocket and almost be invisible. Okay, nice square. All right, I like it. Let me try to just make it a little bit better there. Okay, I like it. Let's move on to our next section here, which has us building the actual tower. Now making sure again that we're not putting the engraved side on the inside, we're going to put it on the outside, and we're going to match up all of our tabs. Now this might be a little difficult at first, so my recommendation here is to do a little twist here at the top. We're just doing a temporary one, and that will create some stability in the pieces that will allow us to connect these ones the proper way. Okay, that should keep this connected for right now until we can add more pieces onto it. Again, these 2 are folded correctly. The one at the top is not folded correctly. It's done in a twist. This just keeps everything together. All right, let's put that down. Now we're going to fold these tabs here completely flat. Grab as much of the tab in your tweezers as possible and bend it flat. All right. Now, according to the orientation here, this piece actually goes on the back end. So we're going to place it right here. And we're going to open it up a little bit. There we go. A little bit of finagling, but we got her in there. Finagling. A little bit of fooling around, but we got her in there. These tabs are secured with a nice bend, so we want to make sure we're grabbing as much of the tab in our tweezers as possible before we secure them down. Now, I will make this more stable as we add more stuff onto it. Woo! It's fallen over. Oh no! Okay, not a very stable rocket platform at the moment, but not bad. Let's move on to our next piece here, which has us grabbing part 5 and part 6. Now the key with this here is to go ahead and bend these tabs over. Now this is a very thin piece of metal, so it might be a little tricky to do that. Now this piece is very thin, so this might be hard to grab these little tabs. I'm going to do my best not to bend the rest of the piece. I'm actually going to use 2 pairs of tweezers here to help me with this, just because we are using such a thin piece of metal. Boom. Using 2 pairs of tweezers sometimes is a great way not to warp your piece, especially with these thinner ones like this. Let's grab here. Cool. Okay, and then one more here at the bottom. Awesome. Great. Now let's put these down here and attach it onto the tower. Now I'm going to try to secure this as flat as possible. Again, grabbing as much of a tab in my tweezers as possible and pressing down. You don't want any loose pieces here, especially with this detail. It's such an easy thing to secure. All right, I think that's pretty good. Let's see how it goes on to our tower now. Ah, shoot. I got my pieces mixed up. La 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 la. I got my pieces mixed up. Now I gotta take it apart. This is why we always double check our work. Okay. And then we're gonna untwist this guy. Boop. Rookie mistake. Rookie mistake. Oh, I got a spur there too. What's going on? Can't believe I didn't see that. That's a big one. Okay, we got her. Now we're rebuilding the tower here. Wow! Everything is going wrong. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to get up halfway here. I'm going to secure the top here with a nice little twist. That's just about stability. So again, twist. A little simple one, nothing crazy. And then like that. Boom. Okay, and now this side tower piece gets added on, just like so. Now, the same thing I'm gonna do before, I'm gonna secure the top here with a nice little twist, and that is just until we get some more detail on there. It makes it easier for all of us, and I'm trying not to warp our tower either. That's what's really nice about having these really nice long detailed tweezers. It makes it easier to get in these little long areas. You can also use some really long pliers, but I like the tweezers. Last tab here. And awesome! That tower looks really cool. Okay, let's continue on with the build. The next piece we're actually doing is the top here, and this will actually help me secure everything better, and I'll be able to actually fold these tabs here into their proper positions. Let's grab this piece here. And again, flipping this to the other side here, we're gonna put the engraved side up. And these are all secured with a bend as well. I always start my bend first and then finish it by going underneath. That's nice and secure. I'm gonna make sure this tab here is really nice and flush. What I'm gonna do here is just use my tweezers. Now, if you have a shaping tool, which I do have here, you can also use those as well. But this is a small one, so what I'm going to do is bend one side over just like this, and then I'm going to use that as my template to find out how much I need to bend this metal. Now the way I do this is just kind of doing a lot of bends. I don't do one big bend, I do multiple small ones, and that does a great job of forming our metal and creating no hot spots. Just remember to be consistent when you're bending the piece. And that way you won't have any of those hot spots, like I said, form. There we go. Now we're gonna do the other side here. Just like so. Cool. Now I'm going to bend these tabs down 90 degrees on either side, and that's going to make it easier for me to be able to get these tabs into place. And with that completely shaped and looking kind of nice, I think that looks really good actually. We're going to place it on top. Okay. And now we're going to twist these tabs here. And I'm actually going to use my tab bending tool to help me with this part. But tab bending tool. And let's get in here. There we go. All nice and secure. Looking really cool too. Let's move on to our last piece here for page 1, which is part number 9. Part number 9 is bent into a square. Now it's very important that when I'm bending this piece, you don't want to accidentally misshape anything, especially with all the little holes here in part 9. Okay, and now with part 9 formed, we can attach it onto our tower here. Now I'm actually going to press on this piece before I secure the tabs. And just like that, we got her secured. Now we really want to make sure that all of these tabs are bent really well, or sorry, twisted very well. You want a really secure connection with all of these pieces. Yes, they will be attached to the rocket later, but you don't want anything to be really moving around much. It creates a bad finish. Okay, and there we go. That's part 9 added onto our tower, and this is looking really cool. Let's grab some more parts. And there we go. We have all of our parts needed for page 3. Now the first thing we're going to be doing is grabbing part 10 here, and we're going to be adding a few more bridges from the bottom going all the way up. Now part 11 here, you have 4 of them. We're going to be bending them all the same way. These are very easy. Just make sure that you actually put them to the engraved side. You don't want that ugly side there. So here we go. Just boom. I'm using all of my tweezer here just to make sure it's a nice even bend when I do that. Same thing here. Okay, there's our first bridge done. Now we've got a couple more here to do. Now, one thing you might want to do if you're doing what I did and cutting out all of your parts, just make sure that you put them in the right area. These bridges kind of look all the same, but they actually are different sizes. So if you accidentally mix one up, it might be a little bit difficult to figure out where that one's supposed to go. All of mine are in order. I should make a little note of that. Just make sure you keep them in order if you do this. Okay, now that we have these all formed, we can attach them onto the tower. Starting at the very bottom. Now, one way to get these in really kind of easy is to put a little bit of pressure where the tabs are when you're pushing them in. You'll find that the tabs slip into their holes a lot easier. Now, these are all secured with a nice twist. I'm going to alternate my twists. That just makes sure the piece is really secured in place and you don't have any kind of like warping. Let's put our next piece on. Okay, so another way to make this easier on yourself is to slightly bend one tab in just a little bit, like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tabs here and now put the straight one in first. And then the one that's slightly bent should slide like that right into place. That's a quick little trick, and it works for a lot of models out there. Just make sure that when you are securing your tabs, you grab as much of the tab as possible before you twist it. Because you did bend that one tab, you might have a little bit of spacing, so just make sure that you really push in when you're securing the tab. Okay, let's move on to our next part here. Same thing, putting that next bridge on. Let's try not bending it first, and then if we have to, we'll just do that little quick trick. Nice and firm little twist here. Boom! Looking pretty cool. That middle one though, there we go. Not bad. I like that. Cool, cool, cool. Now we need to put on to our next step here, which is this guy right here. It's our last part 11 going in here. We're gonna do the trick with this one because it's being a little finicky. And boom, right in. Works every time. You would think you would start off with that method, but no, we like to make things difficult on ourselves first. Awesome. I like how that looks. Now we're going to be moving on to part 12. Part 12 is a little bit bigger than the previous ones. And again, because we kept our pieces in order, we know which one's which. You'll notice that the part actually has no numbering on it, like some of the other models from like P-School, for instance. You don't really need that number on there. And sometimes, if you ask me, when you look at the models up close, if they have the numbers on the pieces, it kind of takes away from the model. Especially if it's like a car or like a really cool monument, you don't really want to see number pieces at all when the model's finished. And it's really hard to avoid when you have those already on there, right? Especially with metal. Just kind of tidy up that detail a little bit there. We can tidy up our platforms, make them look kind of nice. Got some movement in them there, but we're okay. That looks cool. Now we need to move on to part 15. Part 15 is a pretty small and slim part. Now my suggestion with this particular piece is to make sure that you have multiple tweezers on hand to kind of help you bend it so you don't warp it. Like I said before, some of these more smaller pieces are really hard to bend if you don't have multiple things to help you do it. Now I think the best thing for me to do is grab it from the inside here because that's the part that needs to remain straight. And I'm going to try to get as close as I can to the fold line. And then I'm going to press on my tweezers. And then I'm going to grab my other set of tweezers here. And I'm going to bend that detail down just like that. And same thing right here. Push it down. I'm going to try to be as flush as I can. A little detail in the front here. Bending it down as well. Boom. And then I go to the other side. And I do the same thing. Cool. Nice and square. All right, now that that piece is formed, we can put it onto our tower up here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is once I get the one side in, I'm going to secure it. That way it doesn't come out. I'm trying really hard not to warp this tower here. It's kind of hard not to. I think that once everything's connected together, I can maybe straighten it out a little bit. But I think it's something that you're going to have to try to avoid if you're building this model, is to try not to kind of warp this big part 10 here. Okay. Okay, I like how that looks. Now that all of these pieces are connected, we need to attach it onto the tower. Let's see if we can do that here. Okay, just like a zipper, we got her going there. Ooh. All right, there we go. That one tab right here is kind of hard to do with the bridge there, but we got her in there. All right, now with this complete, we can move on to the base. Again, using the center of my tweezers here just to help me get this really nice sharp bend. I won't be able to go all the way, but I'll do my best, like this. And then I'll go to the other side, same thing here. Now typically, I would suggest actually attaching everything first and then bending the sides down. I kind of made a rookie move there, but oh well, we'll be able to get everything in place because I have the proper tools. If you don't have the proper tools, secure everything first and then bend your sides down, especially with this big piece 16 here. Okay, let's move on to attaching the tower onto part 16. Awesome. Nice and secure on our base. That looks really neat. Okay, now with these complete, we need to attach little tiny boxes on here too. These boxes are pretty simple to form. This is part 17 right here. Now again, these boxes, like I said, are pretty easy to form. Just everything down 90 degrees. Boom, boom. Match up your edges. Make sure they're really nice and sharp. You don't want to have any gaps in your build. Gaps are your enemy. Okay. Now those boxes are formed. We can put them into our model. I'm going to try to get the one that's closest to the edge. You know, looking at this now, it might have been a better idea to actually put these boxes into place first and then the tower. Just because these are so much smaller, it would have been easier for me to be able to do that. Like before, we can also bend our tabs slightly on one side to make it easier for us to be able to get these in place. I'm going to try to put it in normally, and then I'm probably going to switch to that method. Okay, that first box is in place. It's a little trickier than I thought it would be for sure. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to bend one slightly in, just like that, one little bit of tab, and we're going to insert the straight side first and then work the other one into place. Now that should have been the hardest one, the one closest to the tower. So let's see if we can do this one here. Okay, there's all of our boxes on our platform, and now we get to work on our rocket. Actually, you know what I'm going to do before we get working on our rocket? I'm going to attach this little cable here at the bottom. Let's just do that real quickly. Boom, twisty, twisty, boom, push her in a little bit. Cool, see? Very simple. Now we get to move on to our rocket piece, and that starts with part 18. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that you really do need to make a nice kind of cone shape. Now, you can use anything around your home. If you have a pencil, that works pretty well. But what I'm going to do is use my friend Animate Orange's tool, this guy right here. And what I'm going to recommend doing is actually rolling your piece. And the reason why I recommend rolling your piece is because it gets a really nice shape started, and then it makes it a lot easier for you to form your piece into what you want it to be. There's a lot of different ways to get cone shapes, and I realize that, but I find this one to be the most effective, especially when it comes to weirdly shaped pieces. Not that this is a weird one, but okay, we got that started. Awesome. Now that we got those pieces started, we can actually start forming things around here. And one way to figure out actually how much we need to bend this shape is to start at the top here and work it around. I'm going to show you guys how to bend these pieces with just your tweezers, just in case you don't have the shaping tools like I have at home. One of the best ways to get a good shaping is to do multiple bends. Don't try to do everything in one big twist. If you do that, you'll find yourself oftentimes having a little bit of a hot spot in a certain area or something not really looking just right. Now with this piece, you kind of have to shape the cylinder as you shape the rest of the piece, especially that cone at the top. I'm going to try bending this cone out of the way a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to try to complete the cylinder first, now that I kind of got the idea about how small this cylinder needs to be. I'm trying to think of something at home that you could probably put in there that would be a really good shape. A lot of people like to use drill bit sets. Drill bit sets are great because they have a lot of different size cylinders there for you to be able to use with the bits. And if you use the non-sharp side and just the back end where you would normally insert that into the drill, those work great. You can find those at the dollar store. Those are pretty cheap. I always recommend using shaping tools over just kind of trying to shape it yourself. You can learn to do it very well. There's a lot of people out there that don't use shaping tools. They only use tweezers, and their builds look fantastic. So there's definitely a skill level to it, but shaping tools, there's no shame in using them. All right, with this piece now complete, we can move on to the next phase, which has us bending everything onto part 19. Now, if we've learned anything from our last little bit there, we know that we need to use multiple bends in order to be able to get this shape. But because this is also bigger, I can use my shaping tools that I've used from earlier to get a better idea of what I'm looking for. Let's try this again with the tools that we've used before. I'll be honest with you, this rocket is a lot skinnier than I thought it was going to be. Now, I want to show you something. I didn't bend my edges, and now see how straight those are? That doesn't look necessarily correct. And if you try to attach your pieces right now, it will look a little bit wonky, and you'll also have a nice little gap running down the center. So the best way to kind of correct that is to, of course, grab your tweezers and round off that edge a little bit. Again, you really do you want to use multiple bends to do this, and again, you can just slightly bend it like that. There we go. And now that one side is nice and rounded, at least a little bit more than it was. And the other side, we can do the same thing. I'm going to see if I can hide my tab here. This might be a bad idea, but we're going to try it. I'm going to pull this side up and push this side down a little bit in the bending. And then pull this up a little bit more. And now I'm going to roll them into each other. Our tab is inserted, and now that looks really cool. All right, that's a hidden tab. Nice. And if you do this correctly, like you see at the bottom here, how I have a little bit of a gap situation, that can happen when you're trying to hide your tabs. You can shape it out a little bit and make it look better like that. That looks really cool. I'm actually going to bend this cylinder a little bit more too, just to round it off a little bit more. You want a really nice round rocket, obviously. Okay, with this kind of formed now, I'm still not really happy with its shape. I'm actually probably going to do a little bit more shaping, but what I want to do is I want to attach that top piece we just formed and then see how everything works out. I'm going to try my best to keep all the seams on the same side. That way, the build comes off a little bit more cleaner on one side, and that's the side you want to display it on. Now, I am not a fan of tilty connections, so this build is going to definitely be the vein of my existence. I'm going to have to do a lot of adjusting to make sure everything lines up straight. I'm going to tell you right now, Groovers, I would not worry too much if it's not lining up at this very moment in time. Right now, what we'll do is just get everything connected, and then we'll work all the pieces as we need to. All right, with this piece now formed, we get to move on to part 20, which is extremely easy to do because all we're doing is just attaching the pieces that we've just created onto the center. Okay, and there we go. We've completed everything on page 3. Now we need more parts. And there we go. We have all of our pieces needed to build that Saturn V rocket. The first thing we're going to be doing is building these kind of booster covers, if you will. And these guys here, the way we're going to form them is we're going to roll them. Now, it's very important that we make sure to use the engraved side and not the non-engraved side here. So what I'm going to do right now is put this piece right here. I'm going to grab Animate Orange's coning tool, and then I'm going to press right in the center and just roll. What that's going to do is create a nice shape that we need for this booster. It's not a heavy bend, it's a light bend, right? So we're just doing a nice shaping, rolling it back and forth. The center will actually bend a lot easier because of the 2 insertion holes that are there. Be careful not to get a hot spot. I'm sure that would be a very easy thing to do, and actually I almost did it there, so be very careful about that. You can see how that piece kind of didn't do what I wanted it to do, right? So now what I'm going to do is take the piece, bend it like this. Normally that's a really effective way of bending your pieces, but I think maybe the counter that I'm on right now, because I'm not in my normal place of building, I think maybe that is what's causing the issue here. But regardless, that looks pretty decent. Now we go over to part 21, and what we're going to do is we're folding that in half. So I'm going to flip it around, engraved side, and bending it like this. Okay, now we're going to insert it on. Key to this part here is making sure that the wing is going up just like that. I'm going to call it a wing right now. I know there's 100 people going to be yelling at me in the comments. Now, with this particular part bent and all shaped up, we need to do 3 more of them. Let's skip to where I have them already kind of bent and ready to go. Okay, and there's our last piece all nice and formed. Now we need to move on to part 23, which has us forming a giant cylinder here. Okay, make sure we're bending this on the right side. I'm going to use my dapping set again. Getting this circle is incredibly hard. I think what happened here is I went a little bit too much on the bendy side when I first started this out, and now I'm having to do a lot of correction. You can always fix your pieces, you can always make your cylinders better, but really the best way of doing this is to make sure that you have something similar size to what you're doing. And looking at this right now, I would say, you know, those Crayola markers that come in the bigger packages, the skinnier ones, would be almost perfect for this. Just something to keep in mind if you're looking for something at home before building this model. Now I'm going to bend this tab down just like we did before. We're going to create a locking mechanism. Now once I get this lock done, I will be able to, of course, maybe form this into a better cylinder. Let's do this right here. And this might be a lot trickier though, because I did have that mistake of over bending the piece. I'm going to have to just roll her into place here. This is where college comes in handy. And there we go. Okay. Seems where I connected the tab, it kind of pops out a little bit. Like I said before, that's kind of the negative part of trying to hide your tabs. You kind of get a little bit of leftover metal sometimes. It's not always the greatest thing to do depending on the model. I thought that this one here would be a good one to try it on, and it's not a horrible one, but at the same time, if you don't want to have that kind of leftover metal, I can understand not wanting to do that. Now I am going to just bend this guy out a little bit more down here just to help me form it out. Okay. Now that we got that all done up, we can now add the pieces that we did earlier onto our build. I'm going to bend these tabs down just to help me get them into place. There we go. Now I know that needs to be formed a little bit more, and we can do that, but the important thing we need to do right now is just secure these tabs. So I'm going to do that. Now this part isn't going anywhere, and I can form whatever I need to do. Make this more rounded by just shaping out those bottoms. Nice. Okay, pain in the butt. They always become harder when you get near the seam. Might want to actually connect the one closest to the seam first, and then move to the one that's on the other side and get that one in, just because you get more support on the other side. I can understand how this part of the build would probably be one of the most frustrating parts for a lot of people, and that's just because you're really trying to get these tabs in, and because of the cylinder shape, it's really difficult. I think that the best thing you can really do is just really take your time with this step, and again, get everything attached, and then once it's attached, then form your pieces. I think that makes everything a little bit better, and you can get a really nice look once everything's done. And right now I'm not really too happy with how this looks. I'm not, but I know that by the end, when everything is attached, it will look a lot better, and I'll be able to finick around with some of the way it looks, and of course make it look really nice. We don't want the gaps that we have here along the bottom. That was a really tricky step. If you guys have any questions about that, just make sure you leave a comment down below, and I'll do my best to get back to you with some pointers on how to kind of get through that. All right, now that we got this all connected, we get to move on to attaching the top piece that we kind of got started forming. I'm glad I didn't form that all the way down. I almost did it the wrong way there. These go on the outside connections. Again, we want to make sure we're lining up all of our seams. I'm just going to double check mine again. Well, one ugly side, if you will, and one nice side. And now what we're going to do with these is we're going to twist these into place. And then I'm also going to bend them towards the center here as well. Boom. Now we're going to take this side here on either side and we're going to cone those. And again, I'm going to do this to try to get everything nice and kind of starting to shape. I'm going to go back on here on the other side and do the same thing. All right, that collar looks really nice. Pop that out a little bit, push it back in. Yeah, that seam looks so much better. There we go, nice and complete. Now we can move on to our next piece here, which is part 24. Looks like one of our boosters. And just like before, what we're going to do is we're going to create a really nice cylinder. And what we're going to do is we're going to create that by doing a lot of bends. Now we're going to bend that cone shape at the top, same kind of thing. Making sure that we use as many bends as possible to get that really nice cone shape that we want. We want a really nice even cone shape. Bend these little tabs here at the top out, just like that. Push her together. And now what we're going to do is get right where that seam is, and we're going to start working that seam out so we get a nice cylinder. You can see how we got a start of a nice cylinder, but we still need to work it a little bit, just like that. That looks really nice. And now we can see our cone here, same kind of thing. I'm going to make sure it's a little bit of love there too, just to kind of make it pop out a little bit more. It looks like that one side didn't get as bent as I would have liked it to. Again, when you're doing this, you really want to make sure that every part of your metal is bent. Let's see if I can kind of finagle this a little bit here. There we go. Okay, that looks a little bit better. I'm using a shaping tool here to kind of help me get that shape I would like to have with this cylinder. Okay. Now this booster here gets placed on the bottom part of part 25, this guy right here. Grab these and do a twist. Awesome. And now what we need to do is bend a whole bunch more of these thrusters. And I'm going to go ahead and bend one of these, and then after bending one, I'll fast forward to where I have them already all completed. Now, just like our last one, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the edge here, and we're going to make sure we get a really nice start to our shape here, a really nice cylinder shape. Now, when I get to the tab is typically where I'll stop and then switch over to the other side. Again, making sure I get right to the edge there and doing a nice little curl to really start that nice shaping off that I want. And then I work my way back, doing a lot of small bends. There we go. And now, when the seams connect, I know that I got a decent shaped cylinder. Just like that. Boom. That looks like a really nice circle. Now we're gonna do the same thing with the cylinder, with the cone shape on top here. Same kind of thing. Let's get right to that edge first and bend that edge just ever so slightly like that. That way it kind of knows where it's going. It doesn't get a debate on whether it's going to be shaped or not. It just knows. There we go. Our first booster is down. Now I'm going to just shape it down like this. Boom. That looks kind of cool, right? I think it does. Okay, let's go ahead and fast forward to where we have all of these shaped and ready to go. Okay, and there we go. All of our boosters are nice and formed. Once you do one, it's really easy to do all the others. And now that we have all of our boosters actually completed, we need to move on to adding it to our rocket. I think that this part here might be tricky just because of all the detail that we've added onto the rocket. I'm going to work on the one side first and then kind of see where I go with this other side. Actually, that worked a lot better than I thought it would. And because we hadn't formed that detail just yet, it kind of worked out. Okay, now we're going to connect the rocket onto our platform. And it's very important to remember that after bending this tab here, that we're going to connect it onto this little gate right here, not this little piece here, the one just below it. We're going to get that on first. And then after we get that on, we're going to secure it. There we go. With that little bit of securement in there, now we can work this into place. Oh no! Okay. I guess it wasn't as secure as I thought it was. Okay, I think that's better connected this time. Let's try again here without ripping anything out of the socket. Or out of its place, I should say. Okay, we got one in. And two. Fantastic. Very cool. Okay, let's flip it upside down. Now we're going to secure these tabs with a nice little twist. There's one. And pushing down, there's two. All right, now our last step, our last piece to put onto our model is part 26. And part 26 is done by, of course, having the engraved on the inside piece. So what we're going to do is take these sides just like this, going right to the edge there, and we're going to bend these up. And what we're going to do is match the edges along the sides. No gaps. Awesome. Okay, and now with this on, we're going to attach it to the lower half. Okay, and we're complete. All right, I have some work here to do still. I think I need to get some stuff done with the side little bits here. I want the collar here to be better placed together before I start reaching over with my stairs. So I'm going to start working these out a little bit more, and then we should be all complete. All right, I think that is about as best as we're going to be able to get that rocket. Now I'm going to bend these little back tabs here into their proper locations, because if you remember back in the beginning of the build, I actually twisted these tabs here just to kind of get me some stability. But now with everything together, we have a fully built Saturn V rocket. I actually really like that. Doesn't that look neat?